I'm Jenny, and in this session I'm going to be talking about multiple cause and effect. So let's just recap about what systems thinking is. It's a discipline that you can use to look at complex problems in order to understand your system more effectively. And the crux of it is to really understand the relationship between different parts of the system. So instead of trying to break it down into different parts and then get each part to work well, it's about how all those parts work together. And to think systemically, you need two things. You need to understand multiple perspectives. So how do different parts of the system view the problem and the solution and so on. And holism, you need to really see the bigger picture. And in order to do that, you have to abstract up in order to simplify the problem and make it easier to understand and get a sense of what's going on as a whole. So to think systemically, there are a whole lot of systems tools. They help you to surface the multiple perspectives above and below the surface. They help you to discard details so that you can simplify and see the bigger picture. And they help you to see the cause and effect, because complex problems are not linear problems. It's all complex and enmeshed, and it's important to see all the different causes and effects that are going on in the system. I'm going to talk to you now about one particular tool. It's called multiple cause diagrams, and it's one of the most useful diagram tools in systems thinking. It has 4 real benefits. It's used to trace the sequence of cause and effect through a situation or a system, and it's used in different ways. So it helps you to clarify your thinking, bring things into sharper focus, identify potential interventions, generate a debate about what's going on, and also it helps you to develop feedback loops. So how do you do a multiple cause diagram, or what does it look like? Well, this is a multiple cause diagram that was about performance targets introduced into the public sector. So you can see it's got targets incorporated into performance management, and as a result of that, the staff focus on the target rather than on the patient or on the client. And then when they're focusing on the target rather than the client, the service to the client deteriorates. So something like waiting times in a GP surgery, people have got to be seen quicker to meet the targets, so then the GPs just fire people through the system much quicker than in order to make sure they're meeting the targets for waiting times, rather than giving the patient the time that they need. And when the service to clients or patients deteriorates, then there's increased dissatisfaction with the service, and when there's increased dissatisfaction with the service, there's increased pressure on politicians to improve the situation, and then targets are set to improve performance. And so what you end up is with a bit of a feedback loop going on through the system. So this diagram is a really simple, effective and quick way to bring together all the different issues that go on in relation to targets, and to simplify them into something that makes it a lot more obvious, and where you can start to identify feedback loops and think about what you can do to change that system. I'm going to give you an example now. It's a multiple cause diagram that was done a number of years ago with a committee in a very high profile public sector service. And it was a very senior committee, and they asked us to come in and look at why the committee wasn't working and what really was not functioning in the way that it should, and not generating the outcomes that it should as a committee. So after a lot of investigations, this was the diagram that was arrived at and shared with the committee. So the committee is held in low regard was the starting point. It was something that they wanted to understand more about. And using an arrow to show that the committee held in low regard will cause or lead to something, it was like, well, what happens because it's held in low regard? So in this instance, because it was held in no regard, the papers for the committee weren't read, and attendance was a really low priority. And why was the committee held in no regard? Well, there was a lack of challenge, and there was a lack of understanding about the programme that it was supposed to be working on. So in this diagram you can see that there are arrows coming into the starting issue, the committee held in no regard, and there are arrows coming out of it. And those arrows mean causes or needs to. So why was there a lack of challenge? Well, there was a lack of challenge because there was a culture of silo working. The culture of silo working led to a lack of challenge. The lack of challenge led to the committee being held in no regard. There was a lack of corporate thinking in this organisation and in this department, and that led to a lack of understanding about the programme. And there was no shared vision about it either, and that also led to a lack of understanding about the programme, and a lack of understanding about the programme led to the committee being held in no regard. And then you start to see that when attendance in a committee is low, well, why is it low? Because the committee's operating at too detailed a level, and most agenda items are irrelevant to individuals. If attendance is a low priority, they send a deputy. If they send a deputy, it means the senior people are absent, and then there's a lack of challenge. So it all starts to unfold. So once you have your diagram, you can start to drill into it and really investigate what you can learn about the situation from your diagram. So, for example, what are the pivotal issues? Those are the things that are circled here, where there are lots of arrows going in and lots of arrows going out. So the committee has held in no regard is pivotal, and the lack of challenge is also pivotal. So it really shows you that these are two issues that need to be addressed, and then surrounding them are all the reasons and the ways in which you can start to understand them and think about action that can be taken. The starting items are that there was a culture of silo working and there was no shared vision. Well, those are big corporate organisational issues, but you can feed those up. And then for this committee itself and for the chair, they could see the committee was operating at too detailed a level, so they can take some action on those things. You can also see a feedback loop. So the committee held in no regard, attendance a low priority, sending a deputy, senior people's absent, and then a lack of challenge. If there's a lack of challenge, the committee's held in low regard. So feedback loop is reinforcing, you can't get out of it. So it's really important to try and break that feedback loop in some way, and you can do that by going back to the lack of challenge. In this situation, what they did was they said, don't send a deputy. If you can't come, then don't send anyone, because a deputy cannot challenge people who are more senior. Make sure that only the senior people attend, and if with that then there can be the right level of challenge, and that will start to increase the reputation of the committee. So it looks really simple, and in some ways it is, and I suppose the challenge is when you try it yourself, is just to really understand what is the starting point, what is it that you want to understand more about. That's how you do a multiple cause diagram. You think about something that you want to understand more about, and then you put some arrows going into it and some arrows going out of it, and the arrows should only go in one way, and then you develop your diagram and see whether you need to put some more detail in or less detail in. But it's really, really effective. There's some instructions on our toolbox that you can use to try it, and also some examples of them as well. So what are feedback loops? They're a sequence of cause and effects that feed back on themselves. And when the effect is additive, it's described as positive or reinforcing. And when it's negative, then it's stabilising, because it cancels things out. So what do I mean? Well, for example, the council increases the bus fares, fewer people wanting to take the bus, the council reduces the bus fares, more people wanting to take the bus. That's a little cycle that can go through, and that's a negative feedback loop. It sort of balances out. Whereas a positive feedback loop would be increasing sales of an eco product, increasing numbers of happy customers, increasing numbers of people hear about the product, increasing sales of eco product. That's like a reinforcing, so it's a growing feedback loop. It's sort of self-generating. So why are they important? Well, all situations that involve growth and change include a positive feedback loop, and all situations where a system is being controlled include a negative feedback loop. And most real-world situations involve several loops of both types, and it's really important to understand what they are, because then you can start to see what is happening and what might be hard to change in the system. The other thing to remember with feedback loops is that there's sometimes a delay before the effect is felt. So it's a bit like when you're staying in a hotel and you put the shower on and it's freezing, so you turn the heat up and it's still freezing, and then you turn the heat up a bit more, and then you do it again, and then the next minute you're scalded and you have to whack it back down, and it's still really hot, and then you turn it down more, and then suddenly you're freezing. So you just swing between it being really hot and really cold. And that's because there's a delay, because when you first turn the shower on, it takes a while for the water to work its way all the way around the building to get to your shower head. So that's called a delay in the system, and feedback loops often have a delay. And the important thing to do is just to give enough time for the effect to be felt. And typically what people do is they panic about budgets, and then they clamp down on expenditure, and they do it too soon, and then they get to the end of the year and suddenly they've got an underspend and they're trying to spend it really quickly. So that's a classic feedback loop. So if you can look for feedback loops in your system, then and make sure that you've allowed for the delay in the system to really get the effect of the feedback loop, then you're really onto something that you can start to understand and think about in order to make change.